devastating consequences that would follow for the region and beyond. The maintenance of international peace and security requires us all to take decisive action, and now is the moment to redouble our collective efforts to prevent a wider conflagration. I thank you. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, Madam President, we extend our sincere congratulations to Guyana as assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month, and we thank you for your coordination and for convening this urgent and important meeting. We appreciate Under Secretary General Mr. Carlo and Director General Mr. Grossi for their contribution to this meeting. We also wish to express our appreciation to Algeria, Pakistan, China, and the Russian Federation for their support in convening this emergency session to address Israel's unlawful act of aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran, a grave violation of international law and the Charter of the United Nations. I address the Council today on behalf of the people and government of Islamic Republic of Iran with the utmost urgency and grave alarm. Madam President, last night, the Israeli regime, the most dangerous and terrorist regime in the world, with full intelligence and political support from the United States regime, conducted a series of coordinated and premeditated military attacks across multiple cities in Iran. These acts of aggression and unlawful strikes target peaceful nuclear facilities, military sites, vital civilian infrastructure, and residential areas. Among the key targets was the Natanz nuclear facility, a safeguarded site under the full monitoring of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Madam President, we strongly and unequivocally condemn the barbaric and criminal attack. A series of targeted assassinations were against senior military officials, nuclear scientists, and innocent civilians. So far, 78 people, including senior military officials, have been martyred and over 320 others injured. The overwhelming majority of them civilians, including women and children. Earlier today, Israel continued its act of aggression against Iran, once again targeting multiple civilian and military sites across several Iranian cities. These deliberate and systematic killings were not only illegal, but inhuman, a chilling display of calculated aggression. These atrocities constitute clear acts of state terrorism and flagrant violation of international law. Madam President, the inaction of the United Nations, the Security Council, and the IAEA, despite repeated and documented warning by Islamic Republic of Iran regarding Israeli threats against its nuclear sites, have seriously undermined their credibility and authority. Their silence in the face of repeated Israeli provocation has emboldened this rogue regime to escalate its violation and cross every red line. Let us be clear. This reckless attack on safeguarded nuclear facilities defied not only the fundamental principles of international law, but also basic common conscience. Any damage to these facilities risks catastrophic radiological consequences that would not be confined to Iran, but could spread across the region and beyond. Only a regime devoid of humanity and responsibility would endanger millions of lives in pursuit of its destructive ambitions. These actions stand in direct violation of numerous legal instruments, including the IAEA Statute, the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the Geneva Convention, and multiple Security Council and IAEA General Conference resolutions, all of which prohibit attacks or threats against nuclear facilities under safeguards. Above all, this aggression is a grave breach of the United Nations Charter, particularly Article 2, Paragraph 4, which prohibit the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any member state. Israel also violated Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Permanent Mission of Iraq today formally protested and condemned this violation of its territorial integrity in a letter to the Security Council and the Secretary General. Madam President, those who support this regime with the United States at the forefront must understand that they are complicit by aiding and enabling these crimes, by they share full responsibility for the consequences. Supporting Israel today is supporting war crimes, crimes against humanity, and deliberate undermining of global peace and security. The Israeli regime's long-standing crimes against the oppressed Palestinian people, its repeated violation of the sovereignty of regional countries, and its possessions of undeclared weapons of mass destruction have made the Middle East a cauldron of chronic instability since its creation. It is long overdue for the international community to act. This regime must be disarmed of all weapon mass destructions, placed under international supervision, and held fully accountable. Madam President, this is not a regional issue. This is not merely an attack on one country. This is a direct assault on the international order, an attack on the Charter of the United Nations, the UN system, the global nuclear non-proliferation regime, as well as the authority of the IAEA. Israel's leadership, including its criminal prime minister, has shamelessly and publicly claimed responsibility for these heinous acts. Israeli officials say that this aggression aims to wreak nuclear talks. This confession alone is enough to reveal the real motive behind the attack: to kill diplomacy, to sabotage negotiation, and to drag the region into wider conflict. This leaves no room for denial. Furthermore, the aggression was intentional, coordinated, and fully backed by a permanent member of this Council, the United States. The United States' complicity in this terrorist attack is beyond doubt. The officials of the United States have expressly and brazenly confessed their willful aid and assistance in the crimes and gross violation that Israeli regime committed as of last night, including the deliberate transfer of arms. We will not forget that our people lost their lives as a result of the Israeli attacks with American weapons. These actions amount to declaration of war. They are the latest in a long and well-documented pattern of lawless, destabilizing, and aggressive behavior by the Israeli regime, a regime that acts with impunity because it is shielded by powerful allies. This must end. Madam President, the Security Council must act now, firmly and decisively. In 1981, this very council responded unanimously to the Israeli military attack on Iraqi Osirak nuclear reactor by adopting Resolution 487, which unequivocally condemned the aggression as a flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The Council also called on this criminal regime to refrain from any such acts or threats in the future. Had the Council enforced that resolution and held Israel accountable at that time, this regime would not have been emboldened to continue this unlawful behavior with impunity. The current aggression is a direct consequence of decades of inaction and double standards. Madam President, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms its inherent right to self-defense as enshrined in Article 51 of the UN Charter. Iran will respond decisively and proportionately to these acts of aggression at a time, in a place, and by means of its choosing. This is not a threat. This is the natural, legal, and necessary consequence of an unprovoked military attack. Iran's response will be firm, lawful, and essential to restore deterrence, defend our sovereignty, and uphold the principles of international law. No aggressor can be allowed to act with impunity. Madam President, we have requested this emergency meeting because we expect this Council to fulfill its charter mandate. The Security Council must condemn, in the strongest possible term, Israeli unlawful aggression. It must take immediate, concrete measures to hold the Israeli regime accountable and to prevent the further corrosion of international peace and security. Anything less would signal to collapse of the international system and invite chaos. Let me conclude with a simple and undeniable truth. Israel attacked Iran. Israel violated international law and the UN Charter, and Israel must be held accountable. The Security Council must act now and stop this act of aggression immediately. Silence is complicity in this crime. I thank you.
Thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Madam President, first, I would like to thank USG DeCarlo and Director General Grossi. Madam President, Israel has acted to prevent its destruction, and the world now stands at a crossroad between denial and clarity. This is not only a defining moment for Israel, it is a defining moment for the global security order and for the credibility of the international system. As we speak, hundreds of ballistic missiles with conventional payloads are striking Israel's cities, neighborhoods, communities. They are striking population centers, not military bases, not Air Force bases, cities. Dozens are injured, 2 of them in a critical condition, and we are still following the news. Now take a moment and imagine if today that radical regime had nuclear warheads for those missiles. Last night, the State of Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a preemptive military operation carried out with precision, purpose, and the most advanced intelligence at our disposal. The mission was very clear: dismantle Iran's nuclear program, eliminate the architects of its terror and aggression, and neutralize the regime's ability to follow through on its repeated public promise to destroy the State of Israel. For years, Iran has declared its intent. Its leaders have spoken without hesitation. Less than a month ago, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei called a, quote, cancerous tumor that must be eradicated. IRGC commanders have vowed to, quote, open the gates of hell on Israel. This is a picture from the main square in Tehran. The streets of Tehran display a countdown clock. At the time of the photo, you can see it in Arabic, it was at 8,411 days. It is tracking the regime's planned timeline for Israel's destruction, paid by the government, putting it in the main squares in Tehran. These threats have been made on a near-daily basis. Never again will we dismiss such threats. For too long, the world convinced itself that these were just words. that genocidal slogans and threats to erase us could be ignored or rationalized. But Israel has never had that luxury. We know our enemies. We know their ideology. And when a regime builds ballistic missiles, enriches uranium to near weapons grade, and openly declares its intent to destroy us, we believe them. We take them at their word. And we take action before it is too late. Colleagues, Israel did not act recklessly. We waited. We waited while Iran enriched uranium to 60%, a level with no civilian justification, and a level that brings the regime within days of a nuclear breakout. We waited while the IAEA reported that Iran had obstructed inspectors, destroyed monitoring equipment, and accelerated its covert special development program. We waited while Iran developed trigger mechanisms, detonation systems, and plans for warheads. We waited while its leadership actively recruited more nuclear scientists. We waited while Iran constructed a ballistic missile industry so large and sophisticated, and we can expose it now, that it was intended to challenge even the US and Russia in ballistic missile capabilities. They cannot deny it. We waited for diplomacy to work. We gave the international community time. We watched negotiations stretched on as Iran made forced concessions or refused the most fundamental conditions. All the while, Iran continued to build toward the unthinkable. Last night, the wait ended. Our operation targeted 3 layers of the threat. First, we eliminated the central figures of Iran's military and nuclear command. This included Mohammad Hossein Bagheri, chief of the armed forces, Hossein Salami, commander of the IRGC terror organization, and Ghulam Ali Rashid, commander of emergency command. These men directed Iran's conventional military forces and terror forces. They coordinated the terror network that has plagued our region for decades. Think how many meetings you had here about the proxies of Iran in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza. Second, we struck Iran's military infrastructure, specifically the surface-to-surface missile array. Israeli Air Force fighter jets, guided by precise intelligence, completed a series of strikes against the Iranian regime's missile capabilities. Dozens of launchers, missile storage facilities, and additional military sites were destroyed. Late last year, Iran launched wave after wave of ballistic missiles at our cities. They deliberately targeted civilians. The destruction of these missile systems is a moral imperative. These are weapons with the capacity to reach thousands of kilometers. Leaving them in the hands of a radical regime, one that openly dreamed of wiping our nation off the map, was not an option. We will not hesitate. We will not relent. And we will not allow a genocidal regime to endanger our people. Third, we struck the core of the nuclear program, the underground enrichment facilities at Natanz. This facility was operating at a military-grade capacity. Intelligence confirmed that within days, Iran could have produced enough material for multiple bombs. We targeted the heart of that effort. Madam President, this operation was carried out because the alternative was unthinkable. How long did the world expect us to wait? How long? Let's speak about it. Until they assembled the bomb? Until they mounted it on a Shahab missile? Until it was en route to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, like the more than 100 missiles that they sent an hour ago? How long should we wait? And if anyone in this chamber still believes Iran would never use such a weapon, I invite you to remember October 7. On that day, we saw what Iran's proxy Hamas was capable of. And then in Gaza, they did it with Kalashnikovs, with grenades. They butchered families, they burned children alive, they mutilated women. Imagine what the head of the snake would do with a nuclear warhead. To that end, we uncovered intelligence revealing a multi-front plan directed by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas for a future assault on Israel. This one would be far more sophisticated than October 7. It envisioned mass missile launches, first from Iran, then from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, followed by coordinated infiltrations of our borders. The plan was not aspirational. It was operational, and it was nearing execution. This Council has convened countless times in recent months. You have passed resolutions, called for restraint, demanded ceasefire. You met in emergency sessions when Hamas was under threat. But when Iran marched toward nuclear capability, you said nothing. When they crossed line after line, you drew none of your own. So we acted. We acted to ensure our people alive. We acted so that Jewish children in Jerusalem will not wake up to the sound of air raid sirens triggered by a nuclear launch. We acted so that Iranian missiles will not carry radioactive payloads into civilian neighborhoods. We acted because history has taught us that silence is complicity and hesitation is fatal. We acted because 80 years ago, the Jewish people made a promise to ourselves: never again. That promise applies to a nuclear holocaust as well. This was an act of national preservation. It was one we undertook alone, not because we wanted to, but because we were left no other option. We now turn to this Council, not for permission, but for recognition. Recognition that Israel did what the world should have done. Recognition that the Iranian regime violated every obligation they ever undertook. Recognition that Israel had the undeniable right and duty to defend its people from extermination. We urge the Council to condemn Iran's nuclear violations. We urge the Council to finally acknowledge the existential threat Iran poses to the world. We urge the Council to join us in our commitment to prevent their genocidal dreams from becoming a reality. But we also expect something even more basic: moral clarity. Stop equating aggressors with defenders. Stop treating a genocidal regime and a democracy under siege as two sides of the same coin. The Iranian regime was preparing for war. This war would have stretched across the Middle East, to Europe, to Asia, to the Americas. It would have been against the international order. We acted to prevent a threat that would endanger not only Israel, but the entire world. We will not sit quietly while our people are targeted. Not again, not ever. Empty words will not stop Iran. Israel will. We did not wait for the bomb to fall, and we will never allow that day to come. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Iraq.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for responding to our request and convening this session. I'd like to thank the USG and the Director General of the IEA for their briefings. Madam President, Iraq expresses its deep concern and condemnation of the dangerous military aggression committed by the Israeli entity against the territories of the Islamic Republic of Iran, including their blatant violation of Iraq's sovereignty and the inviolability of its airspace. This constitutes a flagrant breach of the provisions of international law and the UN Charter. In this regard, the Republic of Iraq has submitted a formal letter of complaint to Your Excellency, President of the Security Council. We clarified the details of the said violations, which is not only an infringement on the inviolability and sovereignty of Iraq, but is also an illegitimate use and transgression on the airspace of another sovereign state to initiate acts of aggression against another UN member state. This exposes the entire region to huge security risks. This unacceptable and illegal aerial breach jeopardizes Iraq's security and stability. It's also a dangerous violation of our territorial integrity and our airspace. It pushes us into conflicts that we are not party to and are far from. It threatens regional and international peace and security. Iraq categorically rejects any attempt at turning our territories or airspace into a theater to settle regional or international accounts. We stress that we will not permit our national security or sovereignty to be at risk. We will not allow such violations to be repeated under any pretexts. Madam President, the government of the Republic of Iraq underlines that this aggression is also a violation of relevant Security Council resolutions and a violation of the sovereignty of a UN member state. This necessitates a clear position from the international community to ensure serious accountability. The Israeli entity is fully responsible for this escalation and for the repercussions of this violation on the security of Iraq and that of the entire region. Accordingly, the government of Iraq calls on the Council to, first, condemn this flagrant violation of Iraqi sovereignty and considering it a clear breach of the principles of the UN Charter and the rules of international law. Second, hold the Israeli entity fully responsible legally and politically for these acts of aggression. Third, take the necessary measures to stop these violations and prevent their repetition as they put Iraq's security and stability at risk. Madam President, this aggression highlights once again the need for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and maintain international peace and security. It must take a clear position vis-à-vis such repeated violations by the Israeli entity, whether against the Palestinian people or against a neighboring country in the region, all with impunity in a way that threatens the credibility of the international law at large. It will only exacerbate tension and instability in the region, which might lead to grave consequences. In conclusion, Madam President, the Republic of Iraq reiterates that it is fully committed to the principles of good neighborliness, non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, and respect of international law. We reserve our right to take any necessary measures to protect our national security and sovereignty in line with the Charter and the rules of international law. Iraq calls on this august council to guarantee respect of state sovereignty and independence pursuant to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank the representative of Iraq for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, thank you, Madam President. Distinguished members of the Council, at the outset, allow me to thank Madam De Carlo and Mr. Grossi for their two valuable briefings. We address you today on behalf of the member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, namely the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the Sultanate of Oman, and my country, the State of Kuwait. The GCC condemns the attacks by Israel since early this morning against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its attacks against Iranian territory. We express our concern towards this serious escalation that warns of serious and dire consequences for the regional security and stability. These acts of aggression that come at a delicate moment when the Middle East is witnessing increased level of tensions are a blatant violation against the sovereignty of a UN member state, and they represent a serious precedent that undermines the basis upon which the international law is built, and in particular the principle of the respect for state sovereignty and the non-use or threat of use of force against any state. Madam President, the timing of this attack is very sensitive when international efforts were intensifying to resume nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States. This attack will likely derail the diplomatic efforts and risks a wider conflict that will seriously affect regional and international security. In this context, the GCC affirms that such attacks, regardless of the justification, will only lead to deeper polarization and an expanded conflict, and they pave the way for a regional trajectory that is dangerous and that will not serve the interests of any population in the region. We also emphasize that security in the region cannot be achieved through escalation and bombardment, but through dialogue and political and diplomatic means, and through promotion of good neighborliness and mutual respect. The GCC group will continue the efforts aimed at de-escalation and to advance dialogue and diplomacy. We reiterate our commitment to working with the concerned parties for the sake of peaceful and lasting resolutions that guarantee peace and security in the region. We also call in this context for the greatest degree of restraint and wisdom and to avoid an expanded conflict. The international community, and in particular the UN Security Council, must uphold their responsibility in ending these violations. In conclusion, the GCC reiterates its firm commitment to support peace and security and stability in the region, and we categorically reject the violation of any state sovereignty under any pretext, and we warn against an expanded conflict that will only serve the forces of chaos and extremism. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. I now invite council members to informal consultations to continue our discussion on the subject. The meeting is adjourned.
Good afternoon. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, I wish to make a short statement. We have just concluded an emergency meeting of the Security Council convened under the agenda item Threats to International Peace and Security. The Council addressed Israeli barbaric and criminal attacks against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Islamic Republic of Iran. During the meeting, I made the following key points clear. We unequivocally and forcefully condemn Israeli unlawful and terrorist military aggression against Iran. Israel, the most lawless and violent regime in the world, committed these barbaric attacks with a full intelligence, operational, and political backing of the United States government. This was not self-defense. It was a premeditated, unjustifiable act of aggression. The targets include peaceful nuclear facilities under the IAEA safeguards, military installations, civilian infrastructure, and residential areas. Iran has also been the victim of systematic assassination of senior officials, scientists, and civilians. A campaign of targeted murder that violates the most basic principles of humanity. So far, 78 Iranians have been killed and more than 320 injured, the vast majority of them civilians, including women and children. Let me be clear, Israel attacked safeguarded nuclear sites. This was a reckless criminal act that could have triggered a radiological catastrophe beyond Iran's border. Such an attack is not only a violation of the UN Charter, the statutes of the IAEA and Non-Proliferation Treaty, but it is a direct threat to regional and global peace. This was not simply an attack on Iran. It was an attack on the international legal order, an attack on the United Nations, an attack on every nation that believes in the rule of law over the rule of force. Israel has openly claimed responsibility, and it is done so with the active support of a permanent member of the Council, the United States. This aggression constitutes a declaration of war. Let me be clear, Iran will exercise its inherent right to self-defense under Article 51 of the Charter. Our response will be lawful, proportionate, and determined, and it will come at a time of our choosing. The Security Council must act now and stop the aggressor from the further aggression. It must condemn this act of aggression. It must uphold this charter obligation. It must defend the rule of law. Let me conclude with this. Israel attacked Iran. Israel violated international law. Israel must be held accountable. Silence is not impartiality. Silence is complicity. I thank you. Thank you.
Are you going to continue negotiations with the United States? Are you going to continue nuclear negotiations?
Danny, yes, sir. Danny. Danny Hessett.
Oh yeah, he just